You know what time it is? It's time for video 6. Hi, Kelsey here from Be a Better Guide. Welcome to the 6th video in our free course on how to double your tips. This video I think you're really going to like because I spent the last few weeks doing some research online looking at large group travel companies, and I wanted to find out how they addressed tipping in their literature. So this is stuff that may be on your website, it might be on your an email out or a pre-packaged, things like this. So 3 companies we're going to look at today are G Adventures, formerly Gap Adventures. They're based out of Toronto, Canada. We've got Backroads Tours, based out of Berkeley, California, and they do biking and hiking multi-sport trips all over the world. And thirdly, Vermont Bike Tours, where I believe they're based out of Vermont. I never actually found out. But here's why I think this is awesome. We're going to go through and see exactly the wording that they use when they're mailing out their catalogs or on their FAQ on their website. So if you don't have an FAQ on your tour page yet, this might be a great idea and something you can include, a little bar about tipping. So these companies are dealing with thousands and thousands of people, tourists coming on their tours from all kinds of different cultural backgrounds, right? So they're really setting the expectations on a number of things in their FAQ, and tipping is one of those things. So let's take a look at G Adventures and see how they handled tipping in their FAQ, their frequently asked questions. And I'll pop it up on screen so you can read along. G Adventures tipping FAQ. Is tipping included? And if not, how much should I budget? Although not compulsory, tipping is expected and is an expression of your satisfaction with the people who have assisted you throughout your tour. Although it may not be customary to you, it is of considerable significance to the people who will take care of you during your travels. At the end of your trip, if you felt that your G Adventures CEO, G Adventures guides are called Chief Experience Officers, if you felt that your G Adventures CEO did an outstanding job, tipping is appreciated. The amount is entirely of personal preference. However, as a guideline, 20 to 25 USD or euro per person per week can be used. Pretty cool, huh? Here are 3 things I like about the way that G Adventures addresses their tipping. First of all, you saw that it's not compulsory. They hit that right in the head, so don't feel like you must tip. 2, they also highlighted the fact that while it may not be customary to you, it is really important to our guides, right? So they have no hesitation in calling that out, that G Adventures takes people from all over the world, and they just want to say that, hey, it is kind of the norm that we tip our guides. And lastly, they do provide that guideline, right? Make it simple for people. They've got a US/Euro amount, and that keeps it very simple for people who are pre-planning on what they might like to tip. Backroads Tours tipping FAQ. Gratuities for most services during your trip are covered in the overall cost. We are often asked, however, whether it's appropriate to tip the Backroads trip leaders and what a reasonable amount might be. While we have considered including such gratuities in the overall trip cost, we always come back to the belief that recognizing excellent service is a personal matter. If you feel that your trip leaders have provided an exceptional trip experience, gratuities are encouraged and welcomed at the end of the trip. Typical gratuity on a 6-day casual in-trip is $140 per guest, or about $23 per day. The gratuity is then divided among your trip leaders and other Backroads support staff. So do you see how Backroads has made it a very sort of personal and individual matter, but they've also set this they've predispositioned people to tip, because they say, we've considered it including in the trip price, but hey, we've saved you that money. But secondly, if you feel that your trip leader is giving you an exceptional experience, then tips are appropriate, and welcomed. So if you've got that kind of literature in your FAQ and your tour page and your pre-email, when they come and you give them a knock your socks off tour, like they just have an amazing experience, they're already predispositioned to say, oh, okay, so this is gratuities are appropriate, right? Because they're so impressed with the tour. Another great thing they've done is they've really clarified how tipping works with the whole team. So consider this on your tour. What does it look like? Are you a guide and a driver, some sort of transport? Are you a couple guides? Are you working with a local guide? Be sure to make that very simple, but also very clear in your tipping literature and in your tip speech, right? And ideally, a system like Backroads is best, right? If you can pool your tips so that they just need to tip once to one communal area, and they know that it's going to be divided fairly with everybody, versus saying, okay, please go tip the driver, then tip me, and tip your local guide. That gets a little bit more complicated, and Backroads has chosen to simplify that here. Okay, and finally, let's see what Vermont Bike Tours says. Is tipping included? All gratuities are built into the included features of your vacation, with the exception of those for your trip leaders and drivers. Tipping for your trip leaders and drivers is optional and not included in the price of your vacation. Tipping guidelines are included in your VBT Welcome Handbook, and I did find that Welcome Handbook. Here it is. It is customary to express a personal thank you to your VBT trip leader at the end of your trip, especially if he or she has provided you with excellent service or individual assistance. We recommend the local currency equivalent of $10 to $12 per person for each day of your trip for each trip leader. Okay, great job there by VBT as well. They did the same things as the other companies, but notice as well they took the time to clarify which currency too. And they kind of said the local currency is the currency of choice. So of course you want to receive gratuities in any currency and you can sort of change it out afterwards. But if you do have a preference, don't hesitate to put it in there, a simple line like that. And especially if you're a European leader and you deal with a lot of North Americans or Americans coming over and they're tipping in US cash, it might help just to clarify and say, hey, the US cash isn't as useful to me, or, I lose on the commission. So just clarify that euros are preferred. Okay, so think about this literature and where you can put it, right? Hopefully this has given you some inspiration, but on your website for sure, in terms of the tour description, a tour FAQ. What about the confirmation email? They probably get some kind of confirmation when they book, maybe a reminder beforehand. That's a great section to include a little blurb like this about tipping. And then of course, you'll get into your tip speeches when you're on your tour. So we're going to talk about 3 guilt-free tipping systems in the next video. You'll definitely want to stick around for that. But before we go, if you're a tour operator, tour guide, tour director, how do you manage tips? And how do you manage your trip literature? Post it down in the comments below. If you've got a section on your website, I'd love for this to be a resource for guides coming on, and they could just maybe copy and paste and piece some things together. So what's your literature look like? Post it in the comments below. Thanks.